Today we're going to be a right bunch of tight asses. That's right, folks. By surprisingly popular demand, following on from a Twitter poll, we're going to be talking today about rescuing those unloved miniatures, specifically from eBay as well. I'm going to take some time to talk to you about what I personally look for when I'm trawling eBay, looking to pick up a bargain. I'm going to talk to you about various conditions that things might come to you in, what you might expect that to affect in terms of price. And then we're also going to just take a look at a couple of little ways that I go about taking the paint off of miniatures before I then repaint them to bring some love back into them. It's going to be a bit of a long one today, so strap in and let's get on with it. Okay, so we're here on eBay, and as you can see, I've been looking for a lot of towel stuff recently. You can see in my recent searches. So let's carry on with that. Let's take a look at what towel stuff is available on eBay right now. And I'm just going to go for, let's say, a Commander. I feel like that's a miniature that I can probably get a hefty discount on through eBay. Obviously, I'm getting results straight away. That's good news. The first thing I want to do now is I'm just going to pop to Element for a second and just check what a towel Commander should be costing me. It's always good to have a good idea of what you should be paying for something before you go scouring eBay. So in this case, Towel Commander, £27.63, and the postage on top of that's probably going to be about another £3 or £4. So if we're in the region of 32 to 33 quid, we should say, then that's our benchmark for retail price. So now we can go back here to eBay, and we now also need to think about loadouts. Okay, so the output that I'm looking for on a Commander is the high output burst cannon and missile pod. So yeah, it's pretty standard. That said, maybe interested in taking maybe like a fusion Commander. If it's a cold star Commander, then obviously they move a lot. So right, so first of all, looking at new listings, that's the first issue we're going to run into, new listings. We don't really want to pay 37 quid to buy something off eBay and it take a week to get to us when Element has it in stock and we'll get it next day for £1 less. So we know we're not looking at new listings, and that's really not the point of what we're going through anyway. We want to really look at some of these used miniatures. So what have we got here? Tau Commander, well painted. So this looks like, I think this is one of the old Tau Battlesuit miniatures. Is this an old one? Oh, maybe not. It does look like it's been modified a bit though. But it is on bid. I mean, it's reasonably okay painted. It's a pretty decent paint job on it. But it's obviously not the right colour for me. I'm collecting Viola Sept, so that's not going to be ideal for me. This I'd probably pass by. This looks a little bit more interesting. It's got a 1690 buy it now on it, which is always it's always tempting. It is mounted on a flight base, which is a little bit upsetting. It doesn't appear to have any weapons on it though, so that's interesting. What does it say in the description here? Comes with a support system but no weapons. Painted to an OK standard and base 2. Right, so yeah, this has no weapons. So we would need to then go hunting for some weapons. But this does look, if we examine these zoomy photos, this does look like the paint, it's probably not at a point where we could just paint over it, purely because it looks like it's been hit with contrast paint in quite a few places. And contrast paints, because they seek out the recesses, if something's been hit with contrast paint, you're going to find that painting over it, the recesses are already shallower than they look. Obviously, they've got big dark lines in them, so they look really pronounced. But they're going to be a lot more filled than you'd want them to be. So we'd probably have to strip it. But this is a pretty good shout. 1690 buy it now. What was the postage on it? Was there any Royal Mail second class? Doesn't say. Looks like it's just 1690 buy it now. It doesn't look like it's actually even got a postage charge built into that. So That could be a bargain if we could find a couple of missile pods and a burst cannon for not too much money. So that would be one that I would put into my watch list and I would keep an eye on. Having another scroll, we've got another commander here. Okay, so this is 2850, which I think is a bit ambitious, to be honest, considering the paint job. I mean, again, you know, not ragging on anybody's paint work, but we can clearly see that, you know, a lot of detail has started to be obscured by this paint job. We definitely have to strip this, and that's fine. But for the amount of work that we'd have to do, we want a good price, and this is edging quite close to retail. But we are, yeah, I think we're edging a bit too close to retail price there, considering the work that we'd have to do on the piece. And again, you know, this is for me. This is how I look for stuff on eBay. So, you know, if you are a store that sells on eBay, you may consider this useful feedback. You may have your own reasons for why you charge what you charge based on the condition it's in. Here we've got a Cold Star that's painted and is above retail price, so this is almost definitely not for us. In fairness to it, the paint is really nice and thin. Again, it has been painted with contrast paints, and I think this is probably a flip job. I think this is probably somebody else who's rescued something off of eBay, put a quick lick of paint on it to make it battle ready, and is selling it on for just a small profit. They're probably making a tenner over what they paid, so we definitely pass that one by. We've got a multi-listing here. I mostly tend to not bother with these multi-listings. I don't tend to have a great deal of luck with them. It tends to be people that are selling their armies and trying to maximize how much they're making off of each model, you know, by breaking it down into individual elements instead of selling it as a whole army with a lot of discount on each miniature. So they don't tend to work out super great for me. Okay, and then we're running out of options. But it does look like we found one good option, but there is a chance that when this comes to us, and it's a pretty high chance that we would have to strip it. So let's talk about that. There are a number of ways that miniatures can come to you from eBay, and I just want to quickly take you over a few of the different ways that they might arrive to you and what that may mean for how deep you have to go on the rescuing process. Okay, so first of all, we'll talk about some of the good, and then we'll talk about some of the bad, and then we'll talk about the downright badass. So the first thing I want to show you is this Chaos Raptor, which I ordered as I ordered a squad of these as a maybe include in my Word Bearers army. They're not in any of my current lists, but that doesn't mean they're not going to make it in. And there's a few things to look out for here. So first of all, I'm going to zoom you right in, adjust your focus a little bit for you. There we go, that's better. Okay, so first of all, you can see there's not a lot of mold line removal been done here. You can see up in here, there's a few problem areas, but underneath that elbow pad there and under the shoulder pad. Now, this is not the end of the world, mold line removal not being done, but when it's a situation like this, where the miniature is fully assembled first, just bear in mind there's going to be some places where it's essentially impossible to get a knife, and this has been assembled with, as you can see, I'm cranking on it, this is assembled with plastic glue, so it's not coming apart. So this is the thing, you know, if miniatures come to you like this, you're going to have to be prepared for a bit of a struggle to get in there on mold line removal. One thing I can recommend is a diamond burr on a cordless Dremel. This is just a little single 18650 powered cordless Dremel, and it can do a sterling job of mold line removal. So that's an option for you. But that's okay. The only other thing with this was it did come on a 25mm base, and again, it was plastic glued to that 25mm base. So as you can see, I had to do some surgery to take it off of there and mount it onto a 32 to suit the modern era. But other than that, was fine. Obviously, from a painting perspective, it's a little bit upsetting that we may not be able to reach all of the mold lines. We may end up with a visible mold line or two. But for Battlefield Ready, you know, absolutely fine. And I think I paid 11 quid for the squad of 5. So that, for me, was worth the work. I felt like I'd saved some money. Okay. So next up, I want to talk about when stuff comes in like this. This looks pretty encouraging at first glance, but one of the things that we're going to see here is, and it might be a little bit tricky for you to spot, but one of the things you're going to see is that there are a lot of sort of, see internally to the legs there, because this is an older sculpt. Mold lines were much more problematic on some of these older miniatures. You can see right running down the chain and the skull there and all the way up his side. And then there's a little bit of sprue tag right under his armpit there. That's going to be a bitch to get. So this is a similar story to the last one. There's barely any undercoat on it, so we're not really worried about details being obscured or anything like that. But this is an older sculpt, which means that it has more mold lines and they're harder to reach. The back of the autocannon here is particularly problematic. So these are really something to look out for. Now, it's not to say that you cannot get nice results from something like this. You can absolutely, if you're willing to just do the hard work. Again, one of those diamond triangular burrs on a Dremel will do you a lot of favors for rescuing something like this. And in fact, I've actually got an example right here of one from that very same squad that I rescued. So there you go. That is to demonstrate to you the condition you can get them back into. As you can see, that on a miniature like that, of that age, you can still get it back to pretty good nick, to pretty good serviceable condition, looking reasonably sexy, looking like something you'd want in your army. And this is going to be one of the word bearers, Terminators, for my first Terminator squad. So here we have a Tau Fire Warrior. Again, it's all white, so it's a little bit tricky to see what's going on, but essentially this has just been primed to a really nice standard. Mold line wise, it was very good. It wasn't perfect. I did nip in and correct just a couple of quick mold lines, and then primed back over them. You can actually see a little bare spot there where I've corrected a mold line here, primed back over it, but my primer that's gone back over it isn't quite as strong as the paint around it, so you can just see that very slight grey spot there at the moment. That will obviously disappear when I start painting it proper. But you know, this is kind of pretty much a dream come true. You have to do very, very little work. This actual model was not an eBay rescue, I should point out. This was a donation from the amazing 40k gamer, and he made a number of Tau related donations to the channel because he wanted to see the Tau army get painted. So that's something that's coming up as a studio army, and you're going to see various things from that. But as you can see from this condition, it's quite easy to then get some base coats in and eventually arrive at a completed miniature that looks very nice. So this is my test scheme for the studio Tau army that we are preparing, or that I'm going to be preparing. And as you can see, really nice, you know, decent high tabletop standard of painting. We put a little bit of extra posh on it with that really fine weathering. You can see when I super zoom this, you can actually see what I've done there. It's essentially an edge highlight, but done with like a dashy line. It's a bit slow and laborious, but it looks really, really nice. So I like it a lot. So again, you know, if you get something that has good fundamental integrity to it, then you're going to still get a nice model out of the other side without a ton of work. And these were very, very little work. So I wanted to use them as an example of that, even though they weren't technically from eBay. Okay, so we would consider the next bit that I want to talk to you about the bad, but it's not really the bad. It's just that you've got a bit more work to do. So I'm going to grab a couple of miniatures here. So here is an example. And again, this is a donation from 40k Wargamer. You absolute legend. Thank you so, so much. Here we've got an example of something that the paint isn't problematic in any way on. This is just the wrong colour. So this is going to be my other word bearers Terminator squad. Maybe one in Tartarus armour and one in, you know, normal sort of Chaos Terminator pattern. But this is another example of, it's not particularly bad from a paint job point of view. There's a bit of mold lining that's not been addressed, you know, but again, it's not particularly an issue to sort that out. But I do still need to strip this because unfortunately it is the wrong colour. So this is a good example of where the miniature itself is absolutely fine. And if I was playing Imperial Fists, I'd probably just finish off the trim and spank a few bits of naughtiness around it and have something looking pretty decent. But this is going to have to be stripped, and we're going to go over the hows and the do's and the do nots of stripping shortly. Other than that, pretty decent condition. So another thing to look out for, if it is a miniature that's painted and it's painted fairly well, consider whether or not you can use it in its painted condition, because it could well be a case of that's actually fine for you and you can just sort of finish off that paint job and be very happy. The next less fortunate one is when we get stuff like this. So, quick bit of background. I actually tried to save this. It had no Nuln Oil on it when I got it, and I thought to myself, okay, the paints that it's painted in, this red, whatever this red is extremely glossy. And I thought to myself, you know what, I can't really tell how much the detail has been filled by paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Nuln Oil the whole miniature and see where that brings the detail up to. See what it's looking like. And then from there, I can make a decision as to if I'm going to strip the miniature and start again, or if I'm going to just consider it fine. And when I Nuln Oiled it, it became immediately quite apparent that we weren't really going to have a good time. It's not obscured by paint to the point of being absolutely unreadable, but it's obscured by paint to the point of edges that need to look crisp or look a little bit dull. And to be honest with you, it's coming up a little bit nicer on camera than it looks to the naked eye, which is, a shame, because I want to explain to you, what to look out for when you need to act and how you need to act. But it's, it's not the end of the world. But these were, again, a bargain. I mean, I paid like a tenner for them. They came with the Lord. I think there was 6 miniatures in total. So, you don't grumble at that, because stripping this is very easy. It's not going to be hard work. And we made a significant saving. So, but this is a case of something that you would have to strip. The previous one more illustrates something that you may wish to strip, but don't necessarily have to. Whereas this illustrates a case where you probably have to strip. We've got just quite a few really heavily filled areas of detail here that just aren't going to look as nice as if we were to start again from scratch. Now, the final example I want to give you is when you strike absolute gold. I'm actually going to pull the camera out a bit more here because this is a big one. So this is a ghost keel, sent again as part of that big donation to the channel. And this is the best case scenario. And I have had stuff like this from eBay before. It does happen, it can happen. And when it happens, it's a very good feeling. We have something that's primed for a start, and it's primed nicely. The primer is, as you can see, thin, even. It's been well primed. It's been primed by someone who knows how to prime miniatures. It's got a few scuffs on the primer. You can see, you can maybe see. Yeah, there you go. There's a little bit of red sort of scuffing here where it's rubbed against something, but for the most part, it's fine. It is still a little bit mold liney, but because it's been assembled in sub-assemblies, that's not going to be a problem. We're not going to have an issue cleaning those mold lines because it's sub-assembled. It's also sub-assembled properly. It's sub-assembled how you would want it for painting it as a complete miniature. So we've got the complete leg section here, but they've left off these massive leg plates that I believe go like that, which means that I can still access nicely all of those sort of skeleton areas around here, these little bits. So that does me a big favour. That makes my life a lot easier. They've left the head off, which is really handy because what it means is that I can just paint in here first, and then once I've got in here painted, then I can glue the head on. And the head itself is obviously, as you can see, very easy to access even with all of that stuff in place. There's no issues getting to the head, but if it were in, we would struggle to get in here to work on these bits. So the head is off. This arm was actually off, but that's fine either way. This gyro is pretty easy to reach. You can see I'm not going to struggle to get a paintbrush in there to tackle that gyro, so that's not going to be a problem. the rest of the inside of the arm is basically either black or white, so we're not going to have any issues there. So a little bit of mold line scraping, a tiny bit of repriming. You can see I've started the mold line scraping here, but because this has been sub-assembled and the priming is of good quality, I won't have to actually do any stripping of any kind. I will literally just be able to add another squirt of primer to it, and then we'll be good to go. So this is absolutely the best case scenario for me. If I was buying this off of eBay, I would be very, very happy to pay anything under retail for it, to be honest, because there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. So anything that I was saving on this, I would be very, very happy to be saving. Same goes really if we want to do just a quick recap summary with price in mind. Something like this, where I've got to do a bit of work, I would like it to be a bit below retail, but I wouldn't be particularly bothered if it was fairly close to retail. And again, these were a lot below retail, so very happy with the bargain that I got on them. Something like this, where, you know, it's not been particularly painted with a lot of time and care. It's, you know, you can see it's a quick paint job. It's sort of, I want to get this ready for the battlefield paint job. And I've seen this guy's painting, so I know that he does obviously take a lot more time than this on his other miniatures. He's actually a very good painter. You know, it's something like this where there's nothing particularly massively wrong, but you are going to have to do a bit of work. You may need to choose to repaint. I would want to pay a bit below retail again, but I wouldn't mind too much if it was edging close to retail. When it comes to stuff more like our Terminator friends, where they are the older sculpts, and I know that it's going to be an absolute nightmare to get in at all these extra mold lines, and there's sprue contact points on areas that are going to be almost impossible to cut out. I mean, you can see if I put a knife to this, it's very, very difficult. Like, I can get the actual contact point off, but when it comes to cleaning it up, it's going to be very, very tricky to actually get in there and clean that up. So I know that these are going to be a pain in the arse. I know I'm going to be sat with them for a few hours tarting them up. And that shows in the fact that so far off the squad, I've only got 3 of them with any paint on. So these are the other 2 that I've started to work on. You can see I've just got all my airbrush work on these, sort of the preliminary stuff, but they've got, you know, nothing else on them. And that is purely because they are a lot of work. They are a bit of a pain in the arse to do. And so as a result, I haven't finished working on them yet. Stuff like that, I would want a good discount below retail. And, you know, we can still get it, as you can see, to a very nice place. This is more than fine for the battlefield. You would not be mad at all to field this on the battlefield. But you are going to have to put in a fair bit of work to get it to that state. So you're going to want a fair bit of chop below retail price. You know, I would be looking to maybe save at least 20% off of retail, preferably, you know, closer to 30, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. If we're eBay rescuing, then we accept that we may not always get as much discount as we want. When we get to stuff like this, where it's absolutely perfect, again, anything that I save below retail, I'm happy with. You know, this was something I managed to get from a miniature that looked exactly like this when it started out. It's required very little additional work for me to get to that point. I've had to do almost nothing other than just paint it. So anything that I save, again, over retail, very happy with. Then we get on to finally stuff like this. And this is where I really am expecting a good chop off of retail. And these were a good chop off of retail, which is why I bought them. They were a worthwhile investment. Because whilst I am going to have to do a bunch of work on them, I've already stripped and started repainting a few of them. They just don't happen to be within arm's reach right now. But they will be worth it because Chosen are badass and look badass. And it's not, you know, it's maybe going to be 20 to 30 minutes per miniature. So over the squad of 10, you know, that's going to be a few hours of extra work faffing around. They are, again, also an older sculpt. They're a monopose sculpt, so, you know, if I have any sort of issues during that time, it's going to be a bit harder to fix because of that. So these are where I'm going to be looking for a good knock of discount. This is where I'm going to be hoping to save some cash. And, you know, I paid about half RRP for these. Well, we'll say RRP, they came in a box set originally, but I paid about half what you would normally expect them to be. You normally see them going for about 18 quid for the full squad, and I paid just over a tenner, so almost half. you know, I'm happy at that point to do the extra work for the amount that I've saved. And so that's really what you need to consider. Now, let's talk about how to get that paint off. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you here is my good friend Biostrip 20. This is when I have, you know, quite serious paint-related issues. I need to get the miniature pretty well cleaned, and it's got quite a lot of paint on it. My Biostrip does look nasty. Please don't be scared of this. Mine looks nasty because you can reuse this stuff. And so because you can reuse it, mine has a bunch of stripped paint mixed into it. You're gonna see a recurring theme here with this. People think that a lot of this stuff is sort of one use, one and done, and it is actually perfectly fine and good to use multiple times. So whilst mine looks nasty, I just want to quickly show you how you use it. It comes in a gel like this, and you'll see that when you start to scrub it on, it's non-toxic. I believe the basis of Biostrip is actually citric acid, if memory serves correctly. But it is a relatively safe product. It isn't available, unfortunately, in the States, which is why I'm going to show you another stripping method as well. But essentially all you do is lather it onto the miniature like this, and you can already see this is starting to lift paint. Look, I'm still in the process of applying it, and you can already see that it's lifting paint. In fact, you can see that Mephiston red underneath the Nuln Oil has turned back to Mephiston red on the miniature as well. So you can already tell that this is going to be a very effective product, and you can tell that because before we've even finished applying it, it's already starting to work. However, what you want to do with this is apply it like this and then just give it about a 5-minute sit. It really doesn't need very long. It's very, very fast acting. If you've got a particularly tough, nasty bit of paint on a miniature, you might need a bit longer. But for all intents and purposes, you're going to get pretty good results off of this after about a 5-minute sit, maybe 10 at the most. Now, the only thing to really be aware of here is if you are using this with resin miniatures, it is fine. You can get perfectly good results. I have used it even on resin miniatures that are commissions. In fact, I've got a resin miniature that's just drying off from a wash near me right now that is a commission, and I used Biostrip on, but you do have to act a little bit under the crunch when using Biostrip on resin. You've got about 20 minutes that you can have it on there, and then you need to get it washed off. Once you have it on there for about 20 minutes, around about 20 minutes, if it goes too much longer, it will start to soften the resin, and that's where you're going to have an issue. So you don't want to soften your resin. You're going to want to just make sure that it's off before that happens, because if you obviously soften the resin, it will eventually start to crumble, and you're going to have problems. So yes, if you're using Biostrip on resin, just get it on and off within about 20 minutes and you'll have absolutely no issues. On plastics and metals, leave it on there as long as you like. I'm going to go and wash this off now. Next time you see it on camera, it's going to be a lot cleaner. Okay, so after just a very quick scrub under the sink, you can see almost all of that paint is off, and the rest of it really is clinging for dear life. And I'll show you just by getting a toothpick into the detail here. You can see that what paint is left on there is very much, it's dying to come off. It just hasn't quite come off yet, and that's just because the toothbrush can't really get into the detail, but you can see it's not really gripping the surface of the miniature anymore. And that is because, unfortunately, scrubbing it with a toothbrush isn't ideal. However, I am going to go on to another cleaning method in a second, which you can use just to finish off stuff that's severely caked. And that's the cleaning method that I use to handle things that are less severely caked, things that are less of a problem and just need a very quick, simple solution. So this is where Biostrip will get you on a miniature like this. If you've got a miniature that's particularly open where you can get the toothbrush head in properly, if you've got a miniature with a lot of flat surfaces, you can just get it completely clean with Biostrip and nothing else. But you can see, especially if you look in areas like the face grill, the tentacle here, we have restored a lot of that former beauty, and we can continue to do so with a further method. Just to quickly show you, this is another one from the same batch that was completely stripped back and I started to repaint him. He's not finished. I should point that out. He's not finished, but it is the same miniature from the same batch, stripped in the same way with the finishing off method that I'm going to show you in a second. And as you can see, much cleaner, crisper, sexier, nicer looking details. We can see everything that we need to see. And once this is finished, it will look like it was a new miniature. You will never know that it was a restoration. Okay, so this is my good friend, the ultrasonic cleaner. Basically, it's a little chamber like this. This gross liquid that's inside is a product that in the UK is known as elbow grease. In America, it's known as LA's Totally Awesome. I believe in Canada as well. I'll provide links so that you can get hold of it wherever you are. But this stuff is, it's like a heavy duty detergent with a degreaser. And what it's particularly good at is either stuff like our little dude here, who is mostly stripped but just needs finishing off. And also stuff like, you know, miniatures that are stripped but, that are painted but not too thickly, you know, just need a little bit of extra love. Those are going to be the kind of things that you're going to want to strip this way. So things that are fairly easy to get the paint off essentially. And you just pop it into your ultrasonic cleaner, pop the lid on top. You're going to set your timer. Mine, I have to click it 1,000,000 times. That's 5 minutes. And then it starts jumping 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. That's what we're after. A half an hour cycle. Then we just do that. And you're going to see that you get to endure this wonderful noise. I'll let you endure that for a couple more seconds. Okay. So in the end, I decided to actually take this out before the half an hour cycle was finished. And that was really just for a time sensitivity thing to how it was fitting in with my filming. But as you can see, it's almost completely stripped back to plastic now. There are just a couple of tiny little bits of red clinging in the deepest recesses. And I only gave it 11 minutes and we got it to this point. So if you'd given it the full half hour, you know, it's going to be almost entirely crispy clean. You do have to just give it a quick waft over with a stiff brush as well. I use one like this, just an old crappy nylon one, just to sort of discourage the paint from the surface. It will be completely unadhered, but obviously you need to move it physically off. It's also worth just pointing out, a lot of those last little clinging bits of red that you can see are not actually heavy paint deposits lying in the recesses. What they actually are is just a bit of staining where the paint has been on there so long. It's just, you know, the tiniest, thinnest little layer of staining, and it will come away if you continue to obviously complete that stripping cycle or you know, aggressively sort of remove it. But actually it's so thin that in a lot of cases you can just let it dry and paint over it. So that's just something to be aware of, is that you can get it back to a pretty bloody good state. And that, even from there, even without being absolutely completely fixed, would paint up totally fine and you would not be unhappy with it at all. And so that's just about everything that I feel like you need to know for rescuing miniatures, breathing some life back into them, giving them a little love and saving them from the dark clutches of eBay, which are actually not that bad at all, to be honest. I think with a bit of common sense, we all know what to avoid on eBay, but I do think that there's a certain joy, an added joy, an extra layer of fun that comes to the hobby from finding something that's a bit beaten up, a bit worn down, breathing life into it, bringing it back to a really good state, making it look lovely again. And then on the other side of that, when you look at the miniatures that sort of come to you already in pretty good condition, that's just that buzz you get from getting a bargain, and that's also a brilliant feeling. This is a little pool of knowledge that very closely ties into a lot of the joy that I get out of the hobby, so it's important to me to share this with you. And I'm really grateful that when I polled to see if people wanted to learn about this, it was something that they were happy for me to make a tutorial for, and actually it was very much encouraged. So thank you so much to everyone who voted in that poll and who continues to vote in my polls. You can find a link to my Twitter below if you do want to have more of a say in the kind of thing that goes on the channel. Now, before I go, as usual, I just have to ask you to click that like if you liked the video, to click that subscribe if you want to see more, and of course to consider checking out my Patreon, where you can support me from as little as $1 a month and get a whole bunch of bonuses and added bits of content, including exclusive access to all 4 monthly videos of my new vodcast. We've got some fantastic guests coming up, and I'm going to be recording an episode of that right after this video, actually. So folks, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.